Greetings. My name is Era Lewis, and I am the author of a book titled The Woman's Guide, Cultivating Everyday Personal Magnificence, So a Life of Positive and Deliberate Action. And before we get started, I wanted to say I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not addressing emotional disorders like bipolar disorder or depression. If at this time in your life you're overcome with negative emotions, please pick up the phone and call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And it is at 800-273-8255. They can help you. I'm confident of that. If you see me looking at notes, it's because I want to get through this talk quickly. We're all really busy, and I think it's important that I stay on track. So let me introduce the topic for today is on the emotion bravery. And I wanted to discuss how we can develop bravery even if we don't feel brave. What if you feel discouraged? Or what if your predominant emotion is fearful? How do you have bravery in those instances? And so how do you change that emotion? And it's important, I think, to realize that in taking or abstaining from certain actions, we use emotions all the time. This is something we already do. And we use emotions to gain the desired outcome in our life. So where it gets tricky is understanding how to control and utilize emotions with awareness. And that is to say, you can learn to control and utilize your emotions in perhaps an unfamiliar situation. You might ask, why am I writing about emotions? Well, I went through a very extremely challenging situation on my little farm for the last 10 years. And I had a lot of problems coming at me every day. It seemed like every hour. And I realized I really didn't have the right emotions in place to deal with all these factors. So that's when I learned I had to cultivate different emotions, which allowed me to take positive action. And that's what all of us need to do, is to take positive and deliberate action. Once I realized what I was doing, I could see that this is something a lot of people do. A lot of very successful people do it. And but the problem was I had never seen these methods really broken down into steps. So all of us can become more aware of what it is we want to achieve when we're trying to get to a certain emotion that's going to help us to perhaps get out of a situation in life that we don't want to be in. So we're going to start with the two parts of bravery. Let's talk about that real quick. First, bravery is the ability to cultivate a mobilizing emotion that's greater than the emotion associated with the perceived threat. And the second part of bravery is conversion of the mobilizing emotions into action in spite of the opposing force. So to really understand this, I think it'd be helpful to look at a movie clip real quick. And it's interesting because what's happening is they're trying to get Sarah Connor, this is in Terminator 2, to be brave. So we'll look at that so we kind of understand what it is we're trying to achieve with bravery. So what's going to happen in this scene is Sarah Connor is having a dream. And you'll notice she's in a slip, which I think is to show her vulnerability. I think they just did an excellent job in this movie.
Sarah, wake up. You're dead. Where's our son, Sarah? You took him away from me. He's the target now. I
So I think they did an excellent job in this movie. And I think a lot of times this particular scene and how crucial it is ignored, or it's not even noticed. So we talked about bravery is there's a perceived threat and you need to develop mobilizing emotions. So what was the perceived threat? Well, Sarah's in a mental institution. You know, nobody believes her. That's pretty threatening to a person. And the other threat is to her child. But she loves her child, so she perceives that as a threat. Then what is Kyle going to try to do to mobilize, to give her mobilizing emotions, right? We can't be completely afraid. So what are we going to do? Here's what he...
I've lost it. You're strong, Sarah. Stronger than you ever thought you could be. On your feet, soldier.
Okay, so really key here. He's trying to give her mobilizing emotions. You're strong, Sarah. You're stronger than you ever thought you could be. On your feet, soldier. You know, he's really trying to pump her up to change that emotion of, wow, I'm really discouraged. I'm in this mental institution and not even my son believes what I've had to say. And, you know, it's really looking bad. So she thinks about that. And then in another scene, she goes to the man who's reviewing her case to see if she can call her son. So she's trying to take action now. And the man says, no, you can't make a phone call to him. Well, she gets really furious, and so she attacks him. And so she's using now, she's taking action, but it's really not the best action because they say, well, she's just crazy. So what does she know? But then what she does with her energy, right? She thinks and she ruminates on this. I'm a soldier. I can get out of this. I've got to protect my son. What would be the mobilizing emotion? Love. She loves her son greatly. And love can overcome many emotions that hold us back. She loves her son, and so she's like, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to do something. And remember what we said the second part was having a mobilizing emotion. She has love, this great love for her son that allows her to overcome the perceived threat. And that's when she tries to break out of the asylum. So just as Sarah Connor used love to overcome a really negative, extremely negative situation, we can cultivate an emotion to overcome maybe fear or discouragement, to have bravery, just as she did. Only we don't need Kyle to tell us certain things or to convince us of something or to prompt us. We can do those things ourselves very easily. So you might be thinking, oh, that's all well and good. That's just a movie. What does that have to do with real life? And so I want to talk about something that a lot of people experience. A lot of people experience fear with this particular activity, and it's public speaking. So Jackie Kennedy, Eleanor Roosevelt, Princess Diana, they all had, and it's on the internet, so that's true, had a fear of public speaking. Princess Diana supposedly had a coach to help her with her public speaking. And that coach suggested to her that she speak from the heart. Now, what does that mean? And why would that be important? Well, by speaking from the heart and being in tune with the topic that is dear to her heart, she's cultivating a very strong emotion, something she feels passionate about. That would be an excellent way to overcome a difficulty with public speaking. The other thing, I took a public speaking class with Dale Carnegie. Interestingly enough, they talk about, here it's in their chapter, session 5, enthusiasm is an emotion. They say enthusiasm is an engine that powers us to realize our breakthrough goals. So once again, they're talking about public speaking, and they're trying to talk about other emotions and have enthusiasm. Or what one might say, have passion about your topic. That way you focus on those things and that emotion instead of the fear of the crowd, or the fear if you goof up or whatever, say the wrong thing. The other thing they said in here, which was, I thought, very interesting, they say communicate in a way that moves people to action. What are they talking about? Communicate in a way that moves people to action. And what are we just saying? How do you get people to act? Emotion. If you communicate with passion and enthusiasm, then that is going to bring out the enthusiasm in others, and it helps them to move to action. So it's interesting. There's a lot of discussion in this topic of public speaking, and it has a lot to do with the emotions we have, because nobody wants to listen to a speaker who talks like this in monotone, and you can hardly keep track of what they're saying, and they're really boring. Okay, we know that. So the next topic is that the problem is nobody really tells us how you're going to cultivate bravery, right? What do you do if you're not brave? People just say, well, you better just deal with it, or you better do something different. And you're like, how do I do that? How do I do something different if I don't know how to do that? Well, in my book, I give 5 steps for cultivating bravery. So the first, let's go through this real quick. An example: identify the perceived threat and the surrounding problem. So let's say you're at work and someone's giving you really bad vibes. You don't like him. Yeah. And he's kind of strange, and you're thinking, I don't really like this guy. So the threat is how this man is treating you, and you've identified the perceived threat. It's this guy. Give a name to the predominant emotion. And why is that? You want to identify. Yeah, maybe you just feel a little bit creepy about him or uncomfortable. Or if you feel fearful, you better address that pretty fast. That would be my feeling if you're feeling fearful. So we've got somebody at work we're not really comfortable with, kind of getting on those creepy vibes. You want to, and let's say you're not doing anything about it. You're just afraid, and you're afraid to talk to anybody. Your boss doesn't listen to you, and you're really discouraged. So what you want to do, and this is step number 3, run roughshod over the initial emotion with another more powerful, mobilizing emotion. What does roughshod mean? That means we're just going to mow right over it. We're like a tank, and we're going to push that emotion out of the way and get it out of the way because we don't want to deal with it anymore. You know yourself very well, and you'll know what emotions you need to use. But let's say your boss doesn't really listen to you, and you don't want to be perceived as a troublemaker or something like that. What do? Well, you can say, my safety, let's say you get indignant. My safety is more important than what everybody else is perceiving here, because I know there's something wrong. Or let's say you get a little bit angry. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. They're going to have to listen even though they don't want to listen, or they're incapable of listening. Somebody is going to have to address this problem. So you cultivate an emotion that allows you to, you're basically shoving that fear out of the way, or the discouragement out of the way. Or you say, I'm more important than their inability to manage. So I'm going to address this, and they're going to have to address it, even if they're incompetent at addressing it. Then I'll go up the chain of command and address it. So then the next step is to convert emotion into action and get going. So let's say you're at work and you go, this guy there's something wrong here. I don't like it. They need to address it. And he's been doing some things that make me uncomfortable. And finally you get mad. You go, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. You go see your boss, right? You convert that emotion of anger now into action. Positive, remember what we said, positive and deliberate action. So then you go see your boss and you say, you know what, so-and-so over there he's weird. You know, he's been doing behavior X, Y, and Z to me, and I don't like that. And then he keeps asking me out, and I don't like that either. So I want him to stop, and I want to document right now what you're going to do about this situation. So remember, document things when you go to talk to somebody. Write down the conversation afterwards. Write down what date it was. But go talk to someone. And what you're doing is you're using an emotion that says, I am a valid person. I have a right to be heard. I know that something's wrong, and I'm going to communicate that. That's what you're going to cultivate, that emotion. So let's go say you talk to your boss. The fifth step is to let go of the emotions. Now remember, we don't want to make ourselves sick with emotions. And we know we can. Let's say we worry all the time, or we're not calm, or whatever the issue is. It's important that you learn what steps you need to take to let go of an emotion. So let's say you've spoken to your boss, you get off your shift, you go home, and now let's say, what are you going to do? I think I'll call up my friend Sally Mae and we'll go for a walk and just have a nice time, or we'll go out to dinner and relax and get away. I'm not going to talk about that topic unless it is to just say what else, get her feedback at what else I need to do about this. So be sure and let go of the emotion, because you don't want to just be hanging on to it all the time. So be sure and take positive and deliberate action. And if ultimately the fear is still there the next time you're on that shift, think about what other action you need to take, because you're an important person. You've got to look out for your best interest, because nobody else will. I can tell you that right now. Nobody's going to look out for your best interest like you need to. So if a situation is unsafe, you need to cultivate the emotion that's going to say, okay, we really need to address this now in a different way, because that wasn't good enough. So I hope that's helpful in realizing that you can cultivate bravery through the use of emotion. Just be sure and let the emotion go, so you're not hanging on to it all of the time. If you have particular questions, or I do have a website that you can go to, and I look forward to hearing comments anyone has on this video. So thank you very much. Enjoy to all of you.